Hello, everyone. My name is Susannah Wud. We're here at the Go Viral Festival in Almaty, Kazakhstan, and thank you all for joining us wherever you might be in Kazakhstan or in other countries of the region. Our guest here today is Jeffrey Donenfeld from Boulder, Colorado. He's the investment manager at Boomtown Accelerator. So today we're going to learn a bit about what is an accelerator and how U.S. startups are using accelerators, incubators, other types of support, and how those supports might be implemented here in Central Asia. So my first question is, what the heck is an accelerator? Because I had never heard of that term until I came to Go Viral. So cool. I actually learned a lot from listening to your presentation.
All right, well, thanks for being in the presentation. I appreciate that. And I'm glad to tell you about an accelerator. So a startup accelerator is a model of, I guess, startup support that kind of combines aspects of a private equity venture capital fund, right, in giving equity in giving money to startups that need some help with an educational curriculum, mentor network, and more direct support, right? That startups need. So with the Boomtown model, we don't give a lot of money. We give $20,000, which is spending cash while they're in the program. But the startups that come to us, they'll go through a 12-week-long program. That's classes, workshops, and lectures that are customized for every single cohort that we do and customized for every startup that we're working with. They'll be connected actively with a group of about 400 or 500 mentors, including being assigned lead mentors and being actively introduced. We have mentor matchmaking events and weekly check-ins to make sure that they're really getting the most out of their mentors. They'll be connected with technical resources through like Google Cloud credits, Amazon AWS credits. It's about $1.7 million worth of credit if you add it all up, partially through the Global Accelerator Network, GAN. And then they'll be given an opportunity to pitch at our demo day at the end. So we have a big, huge event at the Boulder Theater in Boulder.
Kind of a celebration of their accomplishments.
Yeah. It's like a celebration of their accomplishments. And it's also their opportunity to pitch what they've been doing to both the general public and groups of accredited investors, and really put themselves out there. Our last demo day was actually the final culminating event of Boulder Startup Week. So we had a huge crowd there, which has worked for us a lot better.
So this accelerator model is something that's relatively recent, I take it, in the United States, because I've heard of angel investors, I've heard of venture capitalists, but it seems like what you're offering is kind of a step between. Right.
It's more of a recent model, and it's been getting really popular lately. I think it's a great model. It allows us to invest in startups that have big questions and issues and problems they want to solve and are really looking forward to solving, and then don't have it figured out, and help them along to figure out those issues and really be able to build themselves up. It kind of allows us to a little bit sidestep that power law of investing, where you invest in so many startups and we'll see which ones succeed and which ones fail, and hopefully the ones that succeed make up for the ones that fail. Mm-hmm. We really look for as many as possible, and we have a pretty good success record, over 80%. Success.
What does success mean in Boomtown terms?
Success is driving revenue. Success is staying in business, and success is creating businesses with long-term viability. Mm-hmm. And so we're pretty good at doing that, and not having to plan on a certain amount of our startups failing, because we can hold their hands through it.
one thing that really appealed to me about your company in the presentation was that residential program and the fact that probably the people that go through these cohorts, they form a bond amongst themselves and they are each other's future network.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And you know, it's not for everyone, and it limits our reach, right? Because we have to find teams that are cohesive teams, but that can actually come to Boulder, which is hard, and live is hard to find. But the teams that can do that have the commitment and the ability to really commit, say, hey, we're going to take 3 months out of our lives and move across the world and come to Boulder. They're really engaged, and they really build our community and help out with everyone else.
Well, what I was thinking about was I had seen a 60 Minutes piece on Steve Case, and he actually has taken kind of the opposite approach. For those of you who don't know, Steve Case was the founder of AOL, which is a very successful company in the 90s, and now he's a venture capitalist. And he has decided that Silicon Valley is kind of failing America, that the heartland, that there are a lot of amazing ideas in small places, small towns, the heartland of America. And he actually has this bus, and he's traveling across the country.
Oh, is he really?
Scouring the country for good ideas. And so my question to you is that you're getting all these applications, but your acceptance rate is really quite low. I mean, if you compared yourself to an Ivy League college, your acceptance rate is actually less than Harvard or MIT, because you only accept about 2% of your applicants.
I get to read all those applications.
And then you have the Steve Case approach, which is he's literally going out into the countryside trying to find people who have good ideas, but they have no access to capital.
Yeah, right.
So my question to you is, overall, is entrepreneurship really... Is it a possibility for everyone, or are some people getting really left behind, and because they don't have access to capital, they don't have the supports that you're offering to help them get their ideas off the ground? And are there some really amazing ideas out there that are maybe being overlooked?
You know, I think unfortunately some people do get left behind, but I don't think they have to. First of all, I think that access to capital is not critical for every single startup. If you're building a startup and you have a great idea, I don't think you necessarily have to think of your next step as raising $1 million. I think your next step should be figuring out what you're doing and finding those right moves and the right partners. And if you do decide that you need money, if you need maybe lots of money, maybe just a little bit of money, if you decide you need it, then you should know exactly where you're going to spend every dollar and how you're going to do it. So I think that anyone can start building their startup and start with a novel idea. But you know, I appreciate what Steve is doing and traveling around. You know, in Colorado, the state of Colorado actually has a division that specifically is tasked with supporting entrepreneurs from more rural communities in Colorado. And actually, one of our former colleagues at Boomtown is working on this project right now. And I think it's really inspiring. It's a really great program they have going on to go all over Colorado, up into the mountains, and say, hey, what are you guys working on here? And like, can we help you out with that? And can we build that up? Not just from, you know, the startup meetups in Denver and Boulder, right? But like all over the place.
Well, I guess so. My even like bigger bird's eye issue is, do you think that like technology companies, maybe not like the huge ones like Google and Facebook, but all these startups, do you think they're really addressing global development challenges? I mean, do they have the capacity to do that? Or maybe that's not even their role. But I guess I'm asking, what do you see the role of technology startups in solving some of the world's most intractable problems, climate change or food security or lack of clean water? So first of all, I think the big tech companies are supporting in a couple, you know, in some vital ways, right? You've got Google, for example, providing, you know, through Project Loon and all these things, trying to provide connectivity to rural communities. And everything, and then you have, you know, I think it's in India. Like Facebook has like a stripped down version for more rural communities, and they're trying and they're doing their part as they can. But startups can really start in
in rural communities and places where that places that don't have as much visibility on a global scale, right? Countries that aren't as visible on a global scale, and address local issues directly, and then grow out from there. I think that can be really important. I think sometimes when larger tech companies come in, or big multinational corporations come in, they try to apply one solution,
one size fits all solution,
everything, right? And they don't get in there to really understand the nuances of community, and that's where a local startup can really help.
Do you have some examples of success from Boomtown, like in Nigeria or some of the countries that you mentioned?
We have companies from all over the world, and in terms of most of the companies that we invest in will come to Boomtown and test their ideas in Colorado, and then go back to their home country and continue to test it there. So yeah, we've had a couple. And we've had a couple really cool ones.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, switching gears a little bit, you have a really interesting life background before you came before you started at Boomtown, including working in the Antarctic.
Yeah.
As a cook and various other types of support positions.
Yeah.
I also read on your website that you had gone to visit North Korea, and you obviously enjoy traveling a lot. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about your educational background? And because we often get a lot of questions about, well, what should I study, or what's the best field to study? And I always try to emphasize people that in the United States, our educational system is much more flexible, and you're not defined by what your college major was, but oftentimes in this part of the world, people want to graduate with an exact specialty, and they feel like they need to pick that specialty in advance. So tell us a little bit about your education.
So I have a degree in psychology from the University of Colorado at Boulder. CU was a great school, and I did my psychology degree because it was really, really interesting, and the field is still interesting to me, and I loved going to my classes, and it was great, and that was all the reason I needed to do that major, right? And like you said, our system is a lot more flexible, and I could do that and be like, I don't know what I'm going to do after college, right?
You didn't become a psychologist, obviously.
No, I didn't. Then I also, a couple of years ago, I went back and got an MBA from the University of Denver, which was another great thing. I did the MBA because at that point, and at this point, studying those business skills more specifically was something that I was interested in, and it has application to my career right now. But I really did it because it was a true core interest, which I'm very glad that I waited. I waited like 13 years to go back to school, and I'm really glad that I waited because it gave a lot more context on why I was going back to school. But so after college, I actually worked in New York City in digital marketing for a couple of years, which is a great career. And I kind of realized after a while that I was feeling trapped in the city and wanted to get out of the office. And I really love science and technology, and I love talking about it. And that's part of the reason I love coming to conferences like this at GoViral, is because I get to talk to entrepreneurs and technologists and people who are building new things, and that's so cool. And so the Antarctica thing came around because I wanted to go someplace really interesting. I wanted to get involved with science and technology. I wanted to support my country, and I wanted to combine all of those things. Right. So where can I go do that? And I thought that would be working with the United States Antarctic Program. I started. My role was a small role. Like you said, I was a cook.
Well, before you even got hired for that role, you applied for these jobs for
all sorts
4
of things.
years.
Yeah,
what did your family and friends think of you when you quit your job and you were sleeping on your friend's couch?
They didn't think I would do it. They were like, "Best of luck with that."
They never thought it would happen.
Oh my God, it's happening! Yeah. And then they're like, "Oh, great! Like you're throwing your career away."
But how do you sustain yourself for 4 years trying to make this job come true with just this constant like drumbeat of rejection letters. I can't even imagine. I would have given up after the first season.
Well, it's it's kind of like not even a constant drumbeat of rejection letters. It's kind of a constant drumbeat of no response. As you may understand with government hiring, it can be opaque, right? So
you just send your resume off and it just vanishes into cyberspace.
Like, anybody, And so there's a lot of deep introspection in how to navigate that. And
how did you manage to stay focused and not
because
give up?
It's something that I wanted to make it happen. I was going to make it happen, and that was the deal. It's happening. I'm going to make this happen.
And you worked for how many seasons?
Persevered. So I worked for 2 seasons. My first season, I was a cook. But my official job, woke up at 2 a.m. every morning, 6 days a week, single-handedly cooked breakfast for 150 people on station, and then took a little break and then helped out the rest of the kitchen crew with lunch. In all my free time, I volunteered as much time as I could, helping out with the various science projects down there, doing the writing a little bit. I was the station tour guide, and I was like, I'm down here. This is an incredible opportunity. I want to help out in every possible way I can. It was really fulfilling. The second season, so the first season I was a contractor under the Lockheed Martin. Second season, I went back to work on the grantee side for the University of Wisconsin Space Science and Engineering Center, and got to be a field science manager, managing the maintenance and disassembly of an ice coring drill called the Deep Ice Sheet Coring Drill at the West Antarctic Ice Sheet Field Camp, remote field camp. So we were sent off into the middle of West Antarctica to go live in tents for a couple of weeks and to disassemble this massive piece of machinery that had been buried under like 50 feet of ice over the 7 years it was out in the open. And that was specific mission, like get this done. And I got to say, it was probably one of the most fulfilling things that I've done, to be able to support a direct science mission that has produced some really cool results. They've produced these ice core samples that are sent to scientists, atmospheric scientists, glaciologists, all sorts of scientists all over the world to study what's in the ice. Really fulfilling to be able to support that, and fulfilling to be able to be hanging out with these other scientists who are working on this and working on other projects, and sit down to dinner with them and say, hey, what are you working on? Or like, why is that so cool? And, what's the point?
And
I think that's interesting.
The opportunity to explain it to lay people also.
Right, exactly.
Who may not understand what is the value of this science.
Totally. To come here and talk to you about this, I think is like part of the mission, right? Mm-hmm. Which is really, really fulfilling. In fact, during my second season out at Waste Divide Field Camp, we had, it actually wasn't my team directly, it was another team that was working on another project in the same location, but there were only so many people there, so it was one big family. They had embedded in their team a teacher. I think she was like a middle school science teacher, and she got sent out for a week or two to be like an intern for the team, to have this experience, so then she could go and take it back to her class and inspire her kids, which
that's great.
That's like the best. It's so cool.
So what experiences are you able to pull from in your current position? Mm-hmm. Working as a cook, I imagine you handle a lot of logistical things, disassembling this machine, complex problem solving.
So,
are you able to use a lot of your past experience in your current job? Yeah,
I am, all of it. My current job is as the investment manager at Boomtown. I built and managed the process of finding and selecting the startups that we invest in. And, we invest in tech startups mostly, but tech is a huge field. I mean, anything is tech, right? We're on the internet live right now, so you could consider a tech company like streaming, and you can go all the way to science and logistics and agriculture tech and so many fields. And, the thing that I love about my job is I get to get on the phone with tech startup founders every day and say, so what's so cool about what you're doing? Like, what are you up to? And I get to draw on all of this experience You know, like, oh, they're making a new kitchen management software or something, right? And I'm like, I've experienced working in like basically a military cafeteria, right? You know, like a government cafeteria zone. I've experienced like talking to all these scientists, and I've gotten into all of these little micro parts of tech. I've worked with a team that's disassembling the focal plane of a microwave telescope, right? That gets cooled down to 100. It's made of niobium, and that gets cooled down to 150 millikelvin, at which temperature the niobium superconducts, and so it doesn't impart any sort of noise onto the focal plane of this telescope, right? So now I know that, and I've talked to these guys about that, and I can talk to tech startups that are dealing with new antennas or super cooled superconducting magnets to make their tech work. And I'm no expert in any of this, but I can at least start to have a little conversation, and at very least know how to ask the right questions to get to the core of their tech, right? So that's like something I learned at the South Pole by hanging out with these scientists that strangely and fortunately becomes part of my job now.
I think your story is so interesting because just the fact that you are able to weave in, and I see the psychology aspect of your job because you're actually talking to these people, trying to draw them out. I'm sure some of them are not very good at actually communicating to a lay person what it is that they're doing, and it's up to you to kind of be a middleman between them and their idea and the rest of your company to explain why this would be a good startup.
Right, exactly. This is something that stresses me out, actually. Since you
like
touched
translating
on it.
their ideas, or
I fortunately get to get on the phone individually with the founder and say they have a security product, right? The new way of generating passwords. And I'm getting on the phone with the founder, and he's a really smart, really great guy, but he's an engineer, not a salesperson.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, let's sit on the phone for an hour and like tell it to me. Let's talk about it, and let's see if I can work with you a little bit. Like, I believe in you. You can do it. This is great. But none of the execs on our board are going to have the time or wherewithal to get the true value, the core of what you're getting at that makes what you're doing so special in the half an hour of time that you have. That's really actually 20 minutes because we need to ask questions at the end. And you've got 8 people asking disjointed questions, right? So I get to take the time and then help them and kind of consult with them a little bit to translate that into encapsulating it for the board. Hopefully they get it. And then we get to bring them into our program and spend 12 weeks helping them wrap it up and encapsulate it for strategic partners and investors, and really get the pitch down. And in doing that, they really work on their businesses as well and say, hey, actually, like, we don't know how we were going to pitch that, and we don't know how we're going to sell that either. So let's tweak it.
So what do you see are some of the prospects for startups in Central Asia? What do you think are some of the key sectors that could take off in the next few years?
Yeah, there's two sectors that I think are super cool right now, and we talked about this. I did a panel 2 days ago talking about startup trends and everything, and the two that I'm interested in, and there's a ton. I could talk all day about this, but I think that agricultural technologies are really interesting. Actually, I'll add a third one in there too. Agricultural technologies are really interesting. There's a lot going on with sensor tech, Internet of Things tech, networking like mesh, LPWAN, LoRa. And I think all of these things are beginning to be able to come together into making really cool agricultural sensor networks, and then being able to process that data to grow crops a lot more efficiently. I think that logistics is a quickly emerging and really technological industry, right? You've now got Amazon dealing with one-day shipping, figuring out how that works. And you've got warehouse companies edge locating warehouses and doing micro warehouses within cities. And then you've got integration of AI and consumer data and predictive analytics to guess that the 5,000 square feet of this micro warehouse in an office building needs to be stocked with these things at this time so that when people order it, they get it the same day or the next day, right? I think that's really, really interesting.
I think that sector is hugely promising for Kazakhstan because they're really heavily investing in rail to bring goods from China into Europe and then cutting down the shipping time by weeks. But obviously there's always tweaks and ways to improve the systems.
Right. And that in terms of transportation in the logistics too. I mean, we're entering an era where drivers are not going to be needed, and you can have fleets of trucks.
That kind of frightens me, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, right. I know. But yeah, I think we're getting there quickly.
Driverless cars. When do you think driverless trucks will hit America?
Not even driverless cars, but driverless trucks.
How soon do you think we'll see that in the United States?
Like level 5 driverless trucks, like full autonomous? I don't know. I think it's going to be a while till we're really, really, really there. Till we're, I don't think it's going to be there anytime soon, but I think we will start to see fleets of trucks being guided by one driver, or fleets of trucks, each with a driver, but with a way lower cognitive load on the driver, and being able to optimize their route. I think we'll get there first, but I really want that autonomous truck and an autonomous car. Like now.
You're not scared of the possibility for a malfunction and causing accidents?
Yeah, I'm scared, but I feel like it's scary driving our own cars too, and we've got to make progress somehow. I would like to support the development of the machines and let their superior intelligence guide us as humans.
So you're a technology optimist.
Yeah.
I can tell.
Yeah.
I think I trend a little bit toward the pessimist side.
Yeah.
I don't allow my children to use tablets.
Oh, really?
Or phones.
Okay, well...
Because I believe very strongly that children don't have the psychological capacity to understand what it is that they're seeing, and their brains are not developing. What do you think?
That's a really important topic. Man, I talk about this a lot too. Kids and technology is a scary industry, scary thing. How?
Do you have children?
No.
When you do, will you let them use smartphones?
My fiance and I have talked about this a lot. Like, if we have kids, like, at what age do they get a cell phone? And I own an iPhone 10, which I think is pretty teched out, but in 10 years, right, what are our kids going to have access to? How powerful is that? And it's a big question. You want them to be safe, and you want to stay connected with them, and you want them to be able to participate in socializing, but also, like, you see kids that are just glued to the YouTube, and you see, like families at restaurants that have the kids just like on the tablet the whole time. It's like,
a lot of top tech executives don't allow their children to use technology. I thought that was kind of interesting.
I know I see where they're coming from.
I see it everywhere here. I see everywhere, like where I am. Like,
what do you do with your kids? What's the policy?
They read books.
They read books. How can I?
I have a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just never went there. I never introduced. Of course, I have my own devices.
Yeah,
they know that I have a smartphone, and they know that I have a tablet, but they just kind of never went to that place, and so they learn how to entertain themselves by reading or playing games. They like to play chess. So it just doesn't occur to them to jump on a phone. Although now my daughter is getting older, and she does like to use Google Hangouts to keep up with her friends in the States while we're living overseas.
Right.
So that aspect, I have kind of eased up somewhat.
Right. It's really interesting, and I'm thinking about your line of work and the fact that you're now living overseas, but your daughter has friends back in the States.
Yeah, and she wants to keep up with them, and she's a teenager.
Can be a pretty solid tool to make that happen.
And that's how we keep up with, that's how I talk to my family, and my brother is a computer programmer.
Right.
So I'm definitely not anti-technology. I'm just very, very cautious when it comes to children, I guess I would say.
The right way.
Yeah.
Cool. Do we
have any questions from the audience?
Yeah.
So the question is, what would you advise to Kazakhstani startups if they want to be in your program?
In my program?
Yeah, in your company's program, investment accelerator program.
Sure. Well, first of all, I would advise you to get in touch with me and apply to our program. Look real carefully at like our selection criteria. I just did a talk about it that you could probably find online. And don't be afraid to be intellectually honest when you're talking to us. We know, you know, when I'm interviewing people, right, when I'm interviewing companies that have applied to our program, I know that you're a startup and you're trying something new and you've probably never done it before. Maybe it's even your first startup. And so I feel like there's no need to be able to present to me every answer. You can say, we're working on this, we have this technology. We think there's something there, we have a little traction, but we don't really know where to go with it next. And we need your help, and that's okay. That honesty and knowing where you're at is really powerful, and I appreciate that. So, cool.
Is there another question from the audience?
No, that's it? Okay, great. Cool.
Okay, well, actually, I think we've...
yeah, are we good on time?
I think we'll wrap up our discussion. So I'd like to thank Jeffrey he did an amazing job at his presentations here at GoViral, and hope that we'll see you back in this region. I hope this is not your last trip to Central Asia, and I hope the next time you explore some of the other countries around, because they're all incredible. And with your level of travel, you'll be blown away by Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan and
Totally.
Tajikistan. I mean, each country has something amazing to offer, and they're incredible people in each of the countries. And that's kind of the spirit of GoViral, I think, is that all these countries they're really becoming more connected now than ever before. A lot of the barriers that were kind of artificially set up are falling down, and it's a really exciting time to be in Central Asia. So I hope we'll see you back here again soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
It's good to be here. And I got to say, I appreciate the work that you and your division are doing here and helping to put this on.
Thank you.
It's a great thing, yeah.
All right,
Cool.
Good night, everybody.